Hey gang, sorry I'm not here today. I hope you're all doing well. I'm gonna just do it all right here in a video, and you can look at the slide deck later, or instead of watching this video, everything I'm gonna say is in the slide deck, which is already posted. But then you don't get my personal riffs and flourishes if you only do the slide deck. Anyway, it's up to you. Here's our plan for today. You're going to do a warm up. Hopefully, you already did it. Then I'm going to walk through notes on 8.1 two-dimensional arrays, which is good, fun stuff. And then you've got a practice Google form and then 2 REPLs. And I've posted videos already to help you with the warm up and also both REPLs. So you should be able to make it through everything today, even though I'm not here, because you've got a virtual haze helping you every step of the way. Okay, not on the Google form, but I did put little comments on all the questions so that if you miss one, there's a short explanation as to what is up. So let's go through this. We're going to start Unit 8. That, by the way, again, there's 10 units altogether. So we're on the third from the last unit of new material. Today, we're doing 8.1, two-dimensional arrays. So I'm going to walk you through it. In Java, these are actually arrays of arrays, and we create them as shown here. Integer, and then 2 sets of square brackets, and then whatever name you want, equals new, integer, and then 10 by 10. This makes a 10 by 10 grid. Picture a chessboard or the game Battleship. But the rows go from 0 to 9 and the columns go from 0 to 9. Now, this is very important. Java is row major, which means that the first number is the row and the second number is the number of columns. And in Java technically supports non-rectangular arrays, but for the AP test, we'll only have to create and use and know about rectangular ones. So that 10 by 10 array, imagine that it is something like this. If we execute this command, int nums equals new int, it creates a 10 by 10 array that's full of zeros. The rows down here go from 0 to 9, and the columns go from 0 to 9. But the contents of a default int array, just like we had when we did regular one-dimensional arrays, int arrays are all initialized to 0. So if we made this call, nums 3, 8 equals 7, it would set the one at row 3, column 8 to 7. If you have trouble remembering which is rows and which is columns, the trick I use when if I get lost is, columns go up and down because they're holding up the front of the building, like a Greek temple, the columns are vertical. So those are the columns. That means the rows go across, All right. You can find the number of rows in an array by using the length call. That's just like a regular array. And you can find the number of columns in a two-dimensional array by getting the first row and then getting the length of that. So saying nums 0 and then dot length. The num 0 gets the array out of row 0 and tells you, and the length of that is how many columns there are. So if I ask you or somebody asks you, how many elements total are there in a 2D array? It's the number of rows times the number of columns. See down here at the bottom, nums.length, that's the number of rows, times nums at 0.length, that's the number of columns. You can create two-dimensional arrays using array initializers, just like you could with regular one-dimensional arrays. So it looks like this. Take a look at my code. Int two-dimensional array nums equals, and then I've got this array initializer here and a lot of curly brackets. So you need a set of curly brackets for each row. and then an outer set of curly brackets holding it all together. So you see 1, 2, 2, 3, that's the top row. 3, 2, 1, 3 is the middle, and 4, 3, 4, 2, that's the bottom row. So you can look at this, and if you remember, once you get familiar with this in practice, you could see, oh, that's a 3 by 4 array. The 3 is 3 rows. Remember, we're row major, so the first number you say is always the number of rows. And we know there's 4 columns because there's 4 numbers in each of these things. So in class, I was going to do this whole thing where I had you hold up your finger with the correct value as I call out an element. So let's just do that. If you are watching the video, don't hold up your finger. People will think you're crazy. But why don't you try to figure out what number is at row 0, column 1. And if you said 2, that is correct. Remember, the rows go 0, 1, 2, and the columns go 0, 1, 2, 3. So next problem. What element is at 2, 1? It's 3. As I just said, the rows are 0, 1, 2. So we're talking about the bottom row. And the columns are 0, 1, 2, 3. So 2, 1 is right here. Got a couple more. This would have been great in person. We would have had some good times. 3, 1. And there's my phone in the background. You can ignore that. This gives you an out of bounds error because there is no row 3 in this array. The rows are 0, 1, 2. So if you try to do 3, 1, you get a out of bounds exception error. So what would we get for nums.length? See if you remember. And you know what? I'll tell you. The length is 3. That's how many rows there are. When you have a 2-dimensional array and you get the length of it, that's how many rows there are. And if you ask for the first row and get the length of that, that's how many columns there are. So this will be 4. And what 2 numbers would we say to get to the bottom right, number 2, that number 2 there? I'll walk you through it. 0, 1, 2. So it's row 2 and 0, 1, 2, 3. So 2, 3 would get us that 2 that I highlighted or circled on the bottom. That was all some good practice. So let's talk a little bit more. We got other things. 2D arrays can be of any data type. For example, here's a frog 2-dimensional array called pond again. New frog 520. So that's 100 frogs in a 5 by 20 array. And here's 2 different versions of string 2-dimensional arrays. I make one here, string seating chart equals new string 5 by 6. And here's another one called board that has a tic-tac-toe board in it. Those are 2 ways to declare a string 2D array. If you print a 2D array using a simple print call, you'll get that weird hash map printout. So just like a regular array, this is the same. So look, if we say here, we make a seating chart array, and then I say print, you're going to get this, something like this, which is, useless. This was exactly what happened with 1-dimensional arrays. To print these arrays, we use nested for loops. So you use one for the rows and one for the columns. And we will cover that next class. So not today. For today's assignments, I made methods that you'll call that print the arrays nicely for you. So you don't have to, you get to just use an array, a method to print today's arrays because I set it up for you. So you didn't have to learn everything on the first day. One final note, just like with one-dimensional arrays, new 2D arrays have default values. I mentioned this already, but ints and doubles default to 0. Booleans default to false, and any non-primitive 2D arrays default to null. So these lines here, int array, 2D array, nums equals new int, and then we print one of the elements. It prints 0 because it's an int array, and they default to 0. These lines, when I create 1,000 by 1,000 frog array, that's a lot of frogs, and try to print one of them, it prints fine, but it says null because there isn't a frog there yet. It just creates like the empty spaces available for us to store frogs. That's it. So again, a summary of what I expect you to get done today: the warm-up, the Google form, and then practice 1 and practice 2. And there's videos for the 3 REPLs, and there's help built into the Google form. As usual, if you don't get them all right on the Google form, or I should just say, to get full credit on the Google form, you need to get a perfect score. So do it again if you need to. No problem. I mean, you can do it as many times as you need to. All right. I hope you're all well. I'm fine. And I'm being trapped inside this computer. Okay. Just kidding. And that was a little humor element for anyone who watched this video to the very end. You guys have a great weekend when it gets here, and I should see you next week. Thanks.